The emotional side is where we start to understand our feelings and we let ourselves feel our feelings so they come out. So the practice with emotional well-being is journaling, I think is the easiest thing. I journal just a couple minutes a day. It's a safe space to be authentic and to see your feelings and to see, you can start to sit back and separate from your feelings. So I teach a lot about journaling because I think even with your best friends or your mom or your husband or your wife, you don't want to share everything, right? But we know that emotional well-being and mental health is related to bloating. It is related to inflammation. It is related to aging. So even though you don't see it, if you just sit there all day in anger and things become unresolved, it really starts to break down your body.
I believe that each and every one of us has the power within ourselves to create the life that we really want. And I want to help give you the tools to make that happen. I'm Danica Patrick, and I'm pretty intense.
Today we have the beautiful Kimberly Snyder. Kimberly's been involved in health and wellness for a long time, and she has helped so many celebrities with their food, with their diet. Foundationally, she has what's called the 4 cornerstones, and that would be food, body, emotional well-being, and spiritual growth. And so she describes that they all need to be in balance. Otherwise, we put too much focus on the other 3 or 2 or 1, whatever it may be. And so it's about sort of cultivating a practice for each one of those, and then really getting into our body, and less about the external and more about the internal. We talked about her past and what led her to being interested in wellness, and then where she is now. So she has a podcast called the Feel Good Podcast, and she also has a product line called Solluna. Basically, by the end of this, you're going to be ordering Solluna products, and you're probably going to be tuning into her podcast to get more information because she is a wealth of it. So enjoy the show today.
Well, it's so nice to meet you in person. I don't know if you remember this, but I had my first juice shop. I think you did a couple of cleanses there.
I totally did. And I was just telling my producer, Jen, about this. I was like, man, back in the day, I ordered Glow Bio. Is it?
Yes.
And I was looking to do it again, like maybe, I don't know, I feel like it was like a year ago. And I'm like, go on. I'm like, wait, wait, no, hang on, this doesn't exist anymore. Is that true?
We moved into the 4 seasons, actually. So my lifestyle brand, we have, supplements and meditations, online courses. It's called Solluna. So then we have a Solluna juice bar inside the 4 seasons. So it is part of the hotel. And also my clients can go there. So it's nice because it's enclosed, and the other one was just like a standalone shop. Now everything's closed, of course, like the hotel is pretty shut down for a while.
Probably just in time to not have a brick and mortar point for sale, like selling things at this day and age of everything going on. But yeah, I mean, I loved your cleanses. I was actually, in fact, I'd be curious to ask how you came up with it, because it's really, or like how you designed it, because it's still possible to recreate these things at home. And so, when I have done them like that and recreated them, it's because of your cleanse that I'm like, I'm going to do some smoothies in there. It doesn't all have to be juice.
Yes. So I think, first of all, the reason I got into health and wellness was because of my own challenges, from someone that, I consider myself a recovering perfectionist, but having eating disorders and bloating problems and acne and all sorts of indigestion and lots of different things. So I've been on a long journey. I went backpacking around the world for 3 years. I've studied Ayurveda. I've been in China for a long time, so different things. And one thing that I've always really felt is such a big part of healing digestion is fiber. And we know fiber doesn't just fill you up, and it doesn't just sweep waste out, but it actually feeds the bacteria in your body, and it helps to create what are called short chain fatty acids, which increases inflammation, and it just rejuvenates your whole system. So what I found, and I've done every sort of cleanse too, Danica. I've done water fast. I've done all juice fast. I've done a 16-day watermelon cleanse, or you just, out of my yoga studio, you just eat watermelon for 16 days. I've tried pretty much everything. And what I found in the combination of some fiber, so some smoothies, because a juice, the fiber is taken out, it's just the actual juice itself, is that there's a deeper level of healing that can happen because you're actually really refortifying your gut flora. It's not, you know, people will do a juice cleanse and think, oh, look, I lost 5 pounds, but it's really just water weight. And then they can gain it as soon as they start eating, or it puts them on this cycle, this yo-yo cycle. Whereas when you have some smoothies in your cleanse, you are stabilizing your blood sugar levels, and you're also, again, recalibrating your gut. So it's a period where you're really going inward and just helping to really reestablish your body's strength. So that became the most powerful cleanse. And then when I started working with clients and different people, and men and women and all different sorts of people, I found that when I added in the smoothies, you know, that's when they started going to a whole new level. And then for the rest of their diet, besides smoothies, I'm a big proponent of soups. Especially if you're trying to slim down or boost your energy or all these different goals that most of us have. Soup for dinner is a really great thing because it's the same concept as the smoothie, where it's easy to digest, but it still has fiber and it breaks down easily and it cleanses your system. It's very nourishing. So yeah.
So a blended soup, or would it be soup with ingredients like vegetables in it without it being blended?
So I'm actually more of a chunky soup person, which is what I think you're talking about. You can blend, but even when you're making a chunky soup, because I like to chew a little bit, the veggies have been so cooked down and then infused with different spices, ginger and different things, that it's still easy to digest. Blended soups are great too, of course.
Okay. I could spiral off on food and wellness, and we will, but you touched on kind of how you got into wellness. So I'd love to hear about that. I'd love to hear about, like, how old were you and what brought on those issues that you fought and overcame and learned from. Like, take me back in time to before it was health and wellness guru Kimberly, you know, take me back to the younger years.
Yeah, it's so funny because I just feel like this whole time, Danica, I've just been sharing things I've learned that have worked in my body, and the journey keeps going and keeps expanding. But if I look back, I look at a pretty insecure teenager that grew up in Connecticut, and everybody was white, and I happened to be, Asian and Hispanic and some white, so I'm mixed. And I just didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel good in my body. So I think for a lot of us women, especially, you start trying to control things that you can, which, is often food, because you can see it, you can pick it up. And so I started really obsessing about my body. This was, sophomore, junior year in high school. So I started to, I was running track. I was not because I liked running, but because I was trying to be thin. And that's when I became bulimic. And I, to an extent, anorexia, that was never diagnosed, but I was just, just not comfortable in my body. And then it swung the other way. Then I went to college and I was like, wow, I'm living with all my friends. So then I got into partying. I was drinking a lot. I was eating late night pizza, and I'm not that tall either. I think you're 5'2", right?
I am. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just a little bit taller than you, but I gained 30 pounds, and a lot of it was in bloat and in my belly. And so it was just this letting go. So I was like swinging here, then I was swinging here. And then finally I came into more of a middle ground. And the way that happened is it's a long story, but I was going to be a doctor. I went into college with a science and math scholarship, but then I interned in a hospital and I didn't like it. So I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I had saved up some money and I got a job in Australia at some marketing firm. And then I ended up traveling. I was going to travel for a couple weeks. But
Did you live in Australia?
Yes. I was there my junior year of college. And then after I graduated, this job I interned for had an office there. So I worked for a year and I saved my money and I started backpacking. And that was this whole other part of my life.
What area were you backpacking?
Well, I was in Australia. So I was going to just do Thailand and Southeast Asia and come back. But I started meeting all these people and I started camping and doing it really cheaply. So in the end, I ended up being on the road for 3 years. And the important part of the story, I still get goosebumps, is that I wasn't in the Western world, Danica, for 3 years. So I was in Africa for about 7 months. I was in Asia for about 18 months, and then some Eastern Europe, and then South America. So that period, I wasn't in the media. I was taken out of the world of dieting and numbers and, you know, what everybody thinks beauty is. And I was just in this, like this expansive realm. I was in India for months. I was in China for months. So it was just this whole education, I think, that I was in. So then I came back to New York City. My family's from the East Coast. And and along the way, I was learning about digestion. I was learning about beauty. I was learning to connect everything. I was learning that, you know, digestion has so much to do with your mind and, you know, meditation and spirituality. And it was all these things that were blowing my mind open. So anyways, I come back to New York City and I just started a free blog, and I was going back to nutrition school, and I was teaching yoga, and I was doing all these different things. And I was really passionate. And as you can tell, I'm still really passionate about talking about this stuff. And it just started to really grow organically. The second television segment I ever did was Good Morning America. And then I met one of when I think she was my first celebrity, Uma Thurman. And then, you know, the different magazines like Vogue and Elle were asking me to, you know, write about different things. So it just started to expand very organically. And then I ended up moving to LA, where a lot of my clients were, and then started that first juice bar where you and I first interacted. And, you know, the books have come now. I'm writing my 6th book right now. You know, and then, so now I have a company called Solluna. And one of the biggest things, Danica, that I've learned, and the thing that I really teach today, is my 4 cornerstone lifestyle, which is food, body, emotional well-being, and spiritual growth. So I look back on my journey and I look at my first 2 books, and they were very focused on food. And food, I think, is the beginning of the wellness journey for most of us, because we can pick it up and you can see it and you can interact with it, and it becomes this thing that you can focus on. But it's really about working with energy, right? So you look at, and I don't know if you've read any of my books, Danica, but one of the first
I've read some. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. Is take numbers out of it. So I don't weigh myself. I don't count the calories of food. I don't ask people how old they are. Sometimes I forget how old I am. I don't live in a world of like finiteness and numbers. It's really working with, you know, what the yogis call the underlying energy matrix of everything. So then I started working with food, and I started understanding, oh, we don't have to diet. You know, we were just talking about fiber and flow. We can open up energy in our body. We can work with energy in a much different way. And then body is how we exercise, how we take care of our skin. And then my last book really focused on the emotional part of well-being, and all this research about bloating and inflammation related to our thought patterns and holding on to guilt and shame and anger. And then the spiritual part I define as just, you know, understanding yourself better and connecting with yourself. So meditation, being in nature, all these different things. So the reason I say this, Danica, is because when I worked with these clients, I worked with all these different actors and all these different people. I would live with them for 4 months. This is before I had kids. So I would travel around the world, and sometimes I would do the press tours. We'd be in a different country every day, and sometimes it would be for a film. And the way I worked with them, you know, I was their nutritionist on paper, but I always say that was maybe 10 to 15% of it. It was, again, working on all these different principles, freeing them of these limited beliefs and these mindsets and these ideas, opening up their body, getting them to connect, to breathe, to relax, which has a big effect on your hormones, has a big effect on stress hormones. Your body can release weight more easily. So I really, when I talk about wellness now, I always say, you know, it can't just be about food. It can't just be about the way you work out, but it's everything all together. The emotional and the spiritual side are really important too. That was a long, long little rant.
That's okay. It's true. Like, all of that is really true. You can't just address one thing and expect it to, you know, reshape your world. I feel like you hear about, you know, people talking about, you know, once they finally relaxed and reduced stress in their life, they just magically lost weight. And so there's different facets to it. So what I'm curious, like, did you learn something when you were abroad, you know, traveling, that you started to make those connections?
That's such a
yourself?
Great question. Yes. So, you know, when I look back on my past, I was a chronic dieter. I was obsessed, you know, with numbers, with all these different things that I tell people not to pay attention to now.
Yeah. And, just like I mean, like, I think a lot of women suffer from that. This isn't, like, I was hard on myself much more so, like, quite a bit when I was younger too. I mean, like, how do we, yes, yes, yes. So I agree with you. It's a normal thing, especially I think for women.
Well, I think when we don't feel comfortable or good on the inside, then we focus on the outside, So again, when we're coming into ourselves, when we haven't gotten into our power yet, and we realize, beauty is so much about our inside and our magnetism and our energy. It's not just about the surface. We give away our power because we focus on the surface. So anyways, for me, I was, I'm plant-based now, Danica, but back then I tried Atkins and paleo and, counting calories and soup diets. I tried everything in my body. And so that period where I went to Australia and I was interning, I was pretty heavy for my frame, and I was drinking diet soda all day, and I never went to the gym because I was tired. I was partying every night, but I happened to see this flyer and it said, learn how to detox at this gym, some class this nutritionist was teaching. And I didn't even know what detoxing was. This is, this was, well over a decade ago now. And so I went and I met with this woman, and she said, so tell me about your digestion. And I was like, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about how to lose weight. Can you tell me the good stuff? And at the time I didn't want to talk about it because I was super constipated, by the way. But I was like, I don't want to talk about that. And she said to me, she looked me in the eye and she said, it's all related. It's all the same thing. So that's when the light bulb first came on that, my digestion is related to my anxiety, to my acne, to my hair not growing, to my fatigue, to my inability to lose weight. So that was when I started to be interested in becoming a nutritionist, from working with this nutritionist and just seeing how she could help me look at my life in a much more holistic way. And so then I would say India had the next biggest impact. I was there for months. I was studying Ayurveda. I was studying yoga for the first time and meditation and learning all these ideas about energy. So one of the reasons I became plant-based, I love, the environmental reasons and the health reasons, was actually energetic reasons. The fact that when something, and I'm not all or nothing, by the way, and a lot of my clients eat meat. So I don't say don't eat meat, although I do promote eating more plants and more vegetables, is that when something with a developed nervous system is killed, it starts to decompose, the energy starts to go down. So because we're living beings and we're trying to be, in our fullest vitality and meditate and go up, those kinds of foods energetically aren't supportive. So I learned a lot in India. I learned a lot from many different teachers along the way. And then I've done many trainings formally and informally to come up with my philosophy today.
Let's go into the food part, because I think that we could probably spend a little bit of time on each one of these 4 cornerstones, because they hold the key. So more about food, like what do you eat on a regular basis, and why don't you eat certain things? How does our body operate? Like, give us a quick overview of what's important.
So, okay, the quick overview, Danica, if I could sum it up, make it really simple, and going back to our core teaching, which is energy, right? So I would say, how do you want to feel in your body? I'll ask you.
You want to have like energy. You want to feel, you want to be strong. You want to reduce inflammation and bloating. You mostly just want energy.
Energy, strength, vitality, all these different words, right? So imagine that the truth that is that energy is never created nor destroyed. It transmutes. So what you're putting into your body starts to become part of the basis of your cells. It starts to infuse throughout your body. So when you look at food, what is supportive of your body goals, right? So to me, it's fresh food. It's food that's grown in nature. Nature is our highest teacher. Nature comes in a complete nutritional package. Only plant foods have fiber. We can get caught up in all these numbers and, am I getting enough riboflavin? And, how many milligrams of vitamin C are in here? So there's this great doctor, T. Colin Campbell, wrote this book, the China study. And he says, when you eat whole foods, your body does the math for you. And I really liked that because, again, I'm not a numbers-based person. But to me, like, the fresher, the better, the more colorful, the more vibrant, the more alive. Now, it doesn't mean you have to eat an all raw diet, but it does mean you want fresher. You probably don't want, to make one meal and eat it all week. So by day 7, it's been sitting around for a long time. I would say, like nature, you want to eat a wide variety of foods. Fiber, I found, for me, is the natural form of portion control. So you don't have to obsess about calories, because fiber will help create bulk in your system and fill you up. So on a daily basis, what that looks like is, I have a glowing green smoothie. I drink hot water with lemon. I'll just go by, what I've eaten today. I personally don't eat gluten. I don't know if it's because of my, genetic, my Asian side, or some people don't tolerate gluten as well. And I'm one of those people. I get really bloated, but I ate a gluten-free wrap with microgreens and sprouts. Think about baby plants, Danica. They're bursting with energy and vitality and all these fatty acids and amino acids, the building blocks of protein. So I eat sprouts and microgreens. I try to eat them every day. I used to grow them, but I don't have time right now, but I buy them. So I have a lot of those, like I have avocado in that wrap, just very alive. And then for dinner last night, I had like a big veggie lentil ginger soup and some sprouted brown rice. So the reason I'm into sprouting too, which is you can get sprouted rice, by the way, and lentils and nuts for a couple dollars more. It just activates. It goes back to nature. If there's a seed and it sits in water, it starts to shed the inhibitor enzymes, and it says, oh, it's safe for me to blossom and to become this huge oak tree, right? But if you don't put water,
like, so it's a usable
exactly. Like, let's say, yeah, look at, just think of like an almond, for instance. It's kind of hard, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you were to put that almond in water, what happens is all this stuff comes to the surface, which are basically inhibitor enzymes and all these acids that protect the almond. Because until it's ready to sprout, what if a fungus comes? What if something tries to eat it, right? What if it just tries to protect itself? But when you germinate it, you put it in water. In nature, when you put seeds in water, they start to sprout, right? They start to grow roots. So it activates. It says to that seed or not, hey, it's safe for you to grow. You can become this giant tree. And what that means when we sprout grains, all this stuff you hear about, it's so confusing, isn't it, Danica? People are like, oh, no, don't eat grains. There's lectin, there's all this stuff. So my answer to that is, we sprout, which removes a lot of those acids. It becomes more easily digestible in the body. I'm a big fan. I'll say it right now, I'm a big carb fan. I'm not someone that doesn't eat carbs. I'm a big fan of Dan Buettner. I don't know if you know who he is. He's come on my podcast too. He discovered the blue zones, which are the 5 healthiest, longest lived communities in the world. There's one in Japan and, Italy, Greece, California, and Costa Rica. And guess what? They're all thin. They don't have the same rate of neurological disorders. They're super happy, all these different factors. And I said to him, hey, Dan, do they eat carbs and grains? And he said, not only do they eat them every day, they eat them every meal. Whether it's the form of a sweet potato, a tuber, or whatever. So I think that everybody's body is different. To sum this up, I think that, different foods interact differently for different people. Some people, and I always say there's a range, for macronutrients. So maybe some people need more fat, they do better with more carbs, or they do better with protein. So you really have to find that right ratio for your body. There isn't one exact right way, but I'll say overall, the more alive we choose, the more plant foods we choose, which have, again, fiber and such a huge range of antioxidants and nutrients. And trying to be more seasonal, trying to really vary what we have. To me, that's the foundation of a really, really powerful diet. And we also know that your gut health is activated by having a wide range of different plant foods. So you don't want to just have the same 5 things every day, every week, but you want to just go and explore and mix and match your veggies. And I think that's really important, as is taking the right probiotics. And there's a couple key supplements that I think are really important too.
Well, you should talk about what Solluna has to offer, because I know from doing your cleanses that you offered like a detox kind of, I don't remember exactly, I don't know if it was magnesium or what exactly it was, but there was that, and then there was a probiotic, but I
Yes.
think you might have one other item in your Solluna lineup. So
Yes.
what should we take if we're going to take something?
That's a great question, Danica, because I think like anything else, you can fall. I've gone into clients' homes and opened their cabinet, and there's been like 70 different pills. And I don't think that we should take
Did you come to my house? Did you open my pantry?
I'm gonna come there next time. I'm gonna do a clean out.
Actually, you'd find a lot of adaptogens. That's probably what I hoard the most of.
I think that's great. I think, adaptogens, things that are whole food based and based in actual herbs and plants, I think are amazing. But there's just a lot of, synthetic stuff out there. There's a lot of minutia. There's a lot of things that it's just, I think I find superfluous. What I like to focus on first, because then we can layer on top, are the supplements that work synergistically and they work holistically for your whole body to go up. So we have what are called SBO probiotics. So they're the Solluna SBO probiotics. And this is based on the fact that, again, nature, your ancestors, Danica, wherever they came from, my ancestors that came from, the Philippines and different countries, someone comes from Africa, wherever you come from, there's one thing that our ancestors have in common, and that's that they didn't have running water. So they would pull the veggies out and they would actually eat a little bit of dirt because they didn't have enough water to wash everything. And that dirt, that soil has the perfect mix of bacterium, and that's how our ancestors got their probiotics. So our probiotics look brown, they look like the dirt, and it's not just some contrived man-made formula. It's actually based in how we used to live, Danica, which is in such close connection with the earth that we used to eat the earth every single day. So it's really powerful. You don't have to refrigerate them because they're so hardy that they survive stomach acid. Sometimes I think, these probiotics that are so delicate, how is this even going to get through the stomach acid into my gut? So probiotics, I would say every day, that's my, probably number one thing I think people should take, just because our gut flora gets wiped out all the time. And then the detoxy you were talking about. So imagine, and I use this water analogy, when I was asking you about how you wanted to feel, Danica, and you were talking about being strong and being in your body. From a water perspective, think about a waterfall, like a water analogy, right? A waterfall is powerful. It's magnetic. It's moving. There's flow. When you see a waterfall, you want to just stare at it, right? Now compare that to a stagnant pond. Think about a pond, billabong, I guess you'd call it in Australia, where there's scum and sort of algae growing on top. And it's just not really beautiful. It's just not moving, and it just starts to look really gross, right? So think about our bodies. It's not just about the calories that we're eating. It's not just about, what we're putting in, but it's how much is also coming out. Because if things start to stick in our body, if they stay, toxins, constipation, just excess waste, whatever it is, it starts to accrue, and it minimizes space in our body. It minimizes oxygen. It ages us faster, and we just don't have that energy because everything is being, cycled through. It's about 98% of our blood, for instance, that goes through our colon. It can pick up waste and redistribute it around our body. So I think it's one of the reasons that people age faster. And I don't just mean, wrinkles, but all our organs start to degrade and our vitality goes down. And, to me, that's, big factor of aging, a big, way that people age is their energy just starts to get lower and lower. So what Detoxy does, it's not a laxative, it's not habit forming, it's nascent oxygen with ASC2P, which is a really potent form of vitamin C. And clinical research has shown when you combine those ingredients, it helps to stop shortening of telomeres, which is basically the caps on the DNA. It's the root cause of aging. So when you're taking these supplements, you're just strengthening the very, very internal root of your body. And at the same time, you're helping to flush waste out. So it's sort of like a traffic jam. I used to live in New York City, and sometimes there'd be a traffic jam at, Union Square, 14th Street, but it really started uptown at 80th Street, right? So when you start to release more from your colon, from your GI tract, you start to open up flow across all your organs, your entire blood flow, your body, your gallbladder, your liver. There's an exchange that happens between your colon and your liver every few minutes. So your whole body starts to open up. So again, this is really important, because even if you start today and you start, going, spending $1,000 a week on organic food and eating perfectly and doing all this stuff, but there's still all this waste that continues to accrue and was there before in your body, you're never going to look your best. You're never going to feel your best. So I recommend taking that in the evening. It's called Detoxy. People take between 1 and 5. It depends on your body. I take 4 personally. The probiotics, you take 2 in the morning. And then our final supplement is called, they're digestive enzymes. They're really powerful enzymes. And you take them right before you eat. Because I always say you're not what you eat, you are what you digest. And these enzymes help to break down the food into, the carbs, the protein, the fat, also the fiber. And it also breaks down strains of candida. So you absorb more nutrients into your body when you eat. It's maximizing it, and it's moving it through so that you don't get bloated. There you go.
I know I've had this stuff before because I've done your cleanses and I've been like, yeah, absolutely, I need Detoxy. And I really should have finished the bottle probably. It's probably still not good. It's been many years. So I'm going to be ordering that. But
some more.
But then I'm going to ask the gross critical question is that how often should we be going number 2? And like how often?
So, I mean, there's a really wide range of opinions here, and different experts will say, oh, well, what's normal for one person isn't normal for other people or whatever. I think in an ideal world, you would go to the bathroom every day, at least once a day.
Yeah.
Guys can go more. I know my husband goes like 6 times a day, but
what does that mean?
I mean, you'd be shocked, Danica, how many women in particular I worked with that go like once a week, sometimes once every 10 days. Yeah, like it can get pretty gnarly.
Nothing can ruin my day worse than missing a day. That's like the worst thing in the world.
It is the worst thing. You feel heavy, you just feel gross. But I will say this, even if someone goes to the bathroom, 6 times a day, 10 times a day, it doesn't mean that all the waste is coming out. There can still be parts of what you're eating, and also just the cellular breakdown that stays in your body, and it starts to what's called impaction. It starts to cement into the sides of your GI tract. Your body's hot. It's a hot mammalian body temperature. It's almost 100 degrees. So things bake, things sit in there. So what's great about Detoxy, the oxygen just comes and it helps to get between the side walls of your colon and the old waste, and helps to get it out. So, just because someone poos a lot doesn't mean that they're toxin free. If that was the case, then everybody that was this big pooper would be an amazing, health and energy. We know that's not true.
That's definitely not true. Okay. So the next cornerstone. So the body.
Yes. So again, this is interesting, Danica, because as human beings, we're having an embodied experience, right? We're supposed to be in our body, but you'd be amazed at how many people say to me, I don't know when I'm hungry. I don't know what my body wants to eat. I don't know what I need, because people are so disconnected from their bodies, especially women. We're up in our heads. We're overthinking. We're analyzing. We're seeing what everybody else is doing on social media, right? We're just comparing. We're just out here.
Or we're just looking at the time of day. You're looking at the time of day and going, well, it's 8 a.m. or not. I should have breakfast, and now I should have lunch. And,
exactly.
I'm pretty bad about that. I feel like I'm almost always hungry, and I force myself to wait 3 to 4 hours between each time I eat. But
you know what though, because you're such a high energy person, and I'd have to look at you in person a little bit or ask you some more questions, but I just think you have a lot of you have a lot of Vata energy. Ayurveda would say you just have a lot. You're active. You're healthy. So as long as the foods are digesting well, you may just have a different eating pattern than other people. And you want to make sure you're getting enough fiber so you do stay full longer at each of your meals. You're not just eating something that's like going through you really fast.
I will say one of the weird things that I've noticed about myself is that I really do better with cooked food.
Yes. Yes.
What does that mean?
So
I don't know if anybody else relates to me when they're listening to this, but like roasted vegetables, like cooked like potatoes and cauliflower and all that stuff, like that works so much better than, like, for me, raw food. Actually smoothies gives me a stomach ache.
Yes. Well, first of all, it's a lot of fiber. And when we cook veggies, we break them down, we make the fiber. It's much easier to digest cooked foods. So I'm a proponent of both. I think we definitely want to have a lot of cooked foods in our diet, but the problem with cooking is that it does denature vitamin C and enzymes. So if you are going to eat mostly cooked, which is, fine, and Ayurveda would really like that actually, just make sure you're taking your digestive enzymes so that you're not taking all of your own body's enzymes to break down the food. And I still think some raw food, like fresh fruit with all the vitamins, or you could try taking the enzymes before a smoothie. Also, some people get bloated from smoothies because they chug them. Since they're whole foods, you really want to chew them well and mix your saliva to break them down enough. So that could be a reason that people don't do well. Also, improper combining. You don't want to put a bunch of protein powder with like a bunch of, fruit, for instance. The fruit breaks down really fast and protein takes longer. So if we simplify our smoothies, like I make protein smoothies with protein powder and banana, which is a slower digesting fruit that doesn't have water. You can't juice a banana, but you can make smoothies out of it. So, anyway, that's a whole other discussion, but my first book, The Beauty Detox Solution, talks about food combining. And that is, when you start to learn some of the principles of that can really help bloating and issues with raw food too.
Thank you. I've actually always been curious about that. And I've wondered if it has something to do with sort of, because you had mentioned Vata. And so what are the three, what would they be called in Ayurvedic?
The doshas, like the different body types. So we all have, different levels of, most people aren't just one. They're, they may be dominant in two. Very rare someone is tridoshic, but Vata is the wind energy. And usually people that have Vata are, they can be smaller and thinner. Kapha is earth. So it's like, steady, slower moving, a little bit heavy, easy to gain weight, body type. And then Pitta is fire. So really great digestion, really moody, gets really hangry if they don't eat right away, like needs that fuel, fiery nature. So probably because you're this, race car driver, you have all the adrenaline, I'd say you're probably Pitta Vata. So
that's probably a good assessment.
And then that makes sense. So everybody's body is different, but the cooked foods for you would probably do really well. And like I said, I would still do digestive enzymes. I would still do some, because the fire can get out of control. You want to make sure your nervous system is soothed all the time. So things like Tulsi tea, you can just sip on when you're working, when you're around. It's really great for your nervous system. So it's it's an Indian herb. Basically it's called Indian holy basil. So you can just sip on it. That would be really good for your nervous system. So speaking of body, Danica, like think about your nervous system. Yoga and Ayurveda talks a lot about our nervous system. We don't talk about it as much in the West, but our nervous system, well, we're starting to with like fight or flight mode, right? People talk about your sympathetic system versus your parasympathetic, but this has always been such a huge focus of Ayurveda and yoga, is not aggravating your nervous system. When you aggravate your nervous system, you affect your endocrine system and your immunity. And obviously everybody right now is trying to keep up their immunity. So your nervous system is like, if we're always just really reactive to everything going around us, and we're, our anxiety levels and our stress is high, we actually weaken our bodies. We make ourselves very susceptible. So when we're talking about the body cornerstone, from a wellness perspective, one of the best things you can do is to give yourself a little, Ayurveda says is the number one anti-aging rejuvenative practice, which is called Rasayana, is very simple, short 2-minute self-massage. So you're supposed to do it with warm oil, like coconut oil, and then you're supposed to take a shower. And it seems really simple, but touch is one of the best ways to soothe your nervous system. That's why massages feel so good, but you can do it to yourself day in and day out, and just to soothe your body. Also, remember, your skin is your largest organ. So body is, not doing hot yoga in the middle of August when it's already really hot outside, if that doesn't feel good to you. It's really adjusting the way that you exercise to be aligned with what feels good to you in that moment. So it's how we exercise. It's how we take care of our skin. I also have a high performance, non-toxic natural skincare line because I had so many skin problems, and I had really bad acne and patchiness and rosacea, all this stuff. So I really do enjoy skincare too. So all of that is in the body corner.
So beautiful. Your skin's really beautiful.
Thank you, Danica. See how hard it is for women to accept compliments? I'm like, whatever, even though I love to compliment people. So I'll take that and I'll say, thank you. See, I'm still working.
It is. And, I mean, like that opens up a door to something that I've like been contemplating a lot. And so we can keep going down these like concepts and about things, but let's riff on this idea. And so, because this kind of plays into, I think perhaps maybe the, emotional part of
Yes.
you, where I agree with you. It can be hard to accept a compliment. And it'd be because in my mind, as I've been unpacking, is like, if we don't believe it about ourselves, it's harder to accept it from someone else, because we're like, we blow it off about ourselves. And so, I've been working on sort of more confidence and more ownership in this like very kind way. And in fact, somebody suggested it to me that, imagine that it's like the little girl in me that's being complimented,
Yes.
as opposed to it being so direct at me, so that it can be accepted. But I believe that that's part of that sort of self-love that you have for yourself, that then you can accept the compliments. Does that resonate with you?
Oh, 100%. I think that it's easy for us to deflect. You're right. We have to really know it and feel it. And one of the biggest things that I've been working on, Danica, in that regard is not feeling, I'm beautiful or I'm enough because of all the things I do, but just because of me being me, right? Like, just that's the essence of yoga. We'll say, you are important, you are amazing because you're living and breathing, and that's it. So it's easy to get caught up in achievements. And I'm like, oh, look at my book did really well, or look, my hair looks good today. But what about the days when my hair doesn't look good? And what about the times where maybe I don't make that list or I don't do that? Does that mean I'm not good enough anymore? It's, this external point of reference, when we're like relying on validation and compliments and likes on social media to feel good enough. It means we never do, because it keeps moving and it keeps shifting. So for me, the big work is, skipping to the fourth cornerstone, is spiritual practice, which I define as just, whatever you do to understand yourself better and connect with yourself. And so that's sitting in stillness. For me, meditation, being in nature. Because I could say to you, Danica, oh my God, it's so amazing. Look at all your, things you've accomplished. It's amazing. And it is amazing, by the way. But, for women and, being a pioneer and doing all this amazing stuff with, race car driving and all this stuff, but still with all your achievements, when I look at you, you're this unique soul. There's no one like you. You're this beautiful person. So I say, I see you, not your achievements. And it's you being worthy and amazing isn't dependent on that. You don't have to keep getting more achievements. You don't have to keep winning more races to be enough. And that's, I think, the problem with our society is, these dopamine hits, and we put something up and people, a million people like it. So we're like, oh, look, people like me for this, or, winning a, whatever it is. So we start to chase that, and it becomes exhausting. And then when we don't get it, then we start to feel like, aren't I good enough? Aren't I worthy anymore? It's like the mom, like her whole self-worth maybe in just raising her kids. So when her kids grow up, she's like, what do I do? Or if an actress retires or she doesn't get roles, she's like, well, I guess no one cares about me. But that's the falseness. That's the limited belief that we create. That's not why you're beautiful. That's not why you're worthy. It has nothing to do with out here. It has to do with the fact that you are a unique soul. There's no one like you. And so no one can take that away from you.
It's such a journey.
It
never ends either.
It never ends, but there comes a day where, for me, and I'm writing about this in my new book, where you change from what's called an external point of reference, where your whole idea about yourself is created from the outside. Look, everybody's looking at me, everybody likes me, or they don't like me, or people really liked, for me, that book, or they like that project, or they like that. It's all from the outside. And that's your reference for if something does good or not. And then when you start doing this 4 cornerstone lifestyle and you start to really think about your feelings and you journal and you meditate, what happens is you switch to what's called an internal point of reference, where it means, when you do your best, you're showing up, you're just being yourself, you're being authentic, you're being sincere. And that means maybe that isn't the biggest post, or maybe this didn't do that well, but it doesn't take away your confidence, because you're connected to yourself on the inside, and that's your real source of safety and security. But it isn't.
What's the practice?
So It's like, how do I get here?
Because it's hard to know. It is hard to know. It's hard to know who am I exactly and what does make me happy. And,
Exactly.
that's such a journey for all of us. And it also evolves, right? So it's kind of an evolutionary process.
It's right. It changes because we shift. But I will say, so the
Mhm.
first two cornerstones are food and body, and those are, very physical and quite, you can see them, you can pick them up, you can touch them. So those are like, easier starting points. So the next point is,
So for the body though, because I want to make sure we give somebody, give them a
yes.
tangible, like we talked a lot about food, but in body, is it about physical activity or is it just about the nervous system?
No, so anything that has to, anything related to your body that's not food. So skincare, using less toxic products,
Oh,
modifying your
uh-huh.
exercise routine based on the season or based how you feel. Supplements would fall into
Mm,
bodies like we talked about. So I would say, just really listen to your body. I used to have this like hardcore hour and a half yoga practice. And then when my mom passed away a couple years ago, I didn't want to do it anymore. I wanted to ground myself. So I started doing beach walks and now I do more hikes. And, it's just like not forcing, but going and really listening to what your body needs. So yeah,
mhm.
skincare, supplements, I would say, touching that self massage is really healing. So
Mm.
anything related to body is in that second cornerstone, really
Okay.
focusing on that.
Okay.
Now the
Okay,
next
cool.
one, yeah, emotional well-being and spiritual your spiritual growth are really interesting because they're the ones that I think people ignore. And what happens is if you
Yeah.
ignore some of the cornerstones, you obsess over the other one or two. So for me, I wasn't in touch with my emotions and my feelings, so I became obsessed with my body and food. I had eating disorders. The emotional side is where we start to understand our feelings and we let ourselves feel our feelings so they come out. So, for instance, have you ever noticed it? So, for me, I'll say it. I used to get really annoyed when I felt like people didn't listen to me. So, like, let's say you interrupt me. Let's say it just seems like you're just listening to your opinion, not listening to mine. Whatever it was this huge trigger. It would make me really upset, and I would kind of avoid somebody or whatever it was. When I started focusing on this cornerstone, I started journaling a lot, and you can start to see different patterns, and you can start to process things. And I started to let myself feel and realize, oh, this something like, we all have stuff from our childhood. It came from feeling not seen and not heard. And then it became this whole thing I constructed my life around, like achieving really
Yeah.
high so people
Mm.
would have to see me and getting really annoyed. But the problem is we stick in those patterns unless we start to see them. So the practice with emotional well-being is journaling, I think is the easiest thing. I journal just a couple minutes a day. It's a safe space to be authentic and to see your feelings and you can start to sit back and separate from your feelings. So I teach a lot about journaling because I think even with your best friends or your mom or your husband or your wife, you don't want to share everything, right? But we know that emotional well-being and mental health is related to bloating. It is related to inflammation. It is related to aging. So even though you don't see it, if you just sit there all day in anger and things become unresolved, it really starts to break down your body. So it's very
Mhm.
interesting.
I wonder if you get this too, but for me, I in my emotional well-being shows up in my body in a very direct way. But the problem is it shows up in my body before I'm aware of it in my mind. So when something's coming through to process something big, something emotional, usually it's my solar plexus
Yes.
and it's usually in my stomach right there. For those who don't know the solar plexus, it's the fourth chakra. It's right sort of at the top of your stomach. It's like that where you get the nervous energy. And it will I will like digestion goes down. Sometimes I've even felt ill, like sick, like can't eat a
Yes.
thing. And, but generally like digestion and bloating are a big thing. Like I just can't get away from this knotted feeling in my
Yes.
stomach, and nothing is going on in my mind as far as what's my world. But I know now because it's happened so many times, and I'm aware and I'm present and I'm paying attention to how I feel. And I also have a good diet to know, like, oh, it wasn't because I had pizza. I don't have pizza. So like I'm pretty consistent with my diet. And so yeah, I wonder if that sort of thing resonates with you, if you feel, if that
Absolutely.
happens in your body.
Exactly. So what, in that case, Danica, it would be noting when that happens, and then,
Mm.
thinking to yourself, what was the precursor to this? Last night, did I have a stressful conversation with somebody? Did something get triggered? Did I, some painful subject get brought up, or, whatever it was, try to backtrack a little bit and see. And every time this happens, you can start to create those patterns. Like for me, I had no clue that I had this thing about not being seen, which then I equated with not being loved or lovable. But when I started to see it, and it came like black and white, it just came because I was, tracking this with my journal. Awareness is a huge part of emotional well-being. Then it doesn't mean we're perfect. It doesn't mean it still doesn't bother us, but we start to create that distance that comes with awareness, and then we can work on it, and then we can create new ideas, new beliefs, and we can overcome it. There's this really amazing psychologist called Dr. David Hawkins, and he has this book called Letting Go. And he talks about the difference between feelings and thoughts. And imagine that thought that may have led up to this, Danica, or someone, someone having a stomach knot, maybe like, that person's a big a-hole, they're so mean, whatever it is, like they suck. And it just keeps going around and around in your head. It's a thought. But if you drop into your body and you start to feel, okay, this is a tightening in my solar plexus, or like I start to have this weird feeling in my heart, and you tune into that feeling. He says it lasts about no more than 10 minutes. So it's this intensity, but then it passes through you and you let go of that emotion. You let yourself feel it, and then you let it go. If we don't let it go, it ends up getting suppressed and repressed into our body and into our cells. And then it starts to lead to bloating and indigestion and, all sorts of aches and pains and joint issues and all sorts of things. So what I would contemplate, Danica, is, is there something that you don't want to feel, you or anyone, not just you, but, for me, is it something you don't want to look at? Is it a pattern? Is it a way you react? And, what is being held in your body? And then you can start to unpack it for yourself. And no one else can do this work for you, because obviously you're the only one feeling it. But it's really, really powerful. And if you're, if you're banging your head, you're like, I'm eating perfectly and I'm doing all this stuff and I gave up dairy and I'm still bloated and I still can't lose 10 pounds. For a lot of people I've worked with, this emotional part is huge. And when you start to help yourself process that, it's amazing how many, I had one man lose 80 pounds once when we started really getting into this stuff. Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible. Do you think that so I heard you say, if you go into the feeling, you feel it, lasts no more than 10 minutes. Can you get out of this trapped emotion, or this held emotion, or this awareness that your body is letting you know about, without going through an actual emotional process? Meaning, can you just witness it and let it go away? Or do you actually have to be vulnerable enough with yourself to cry, essentially, and really feel or scream? Some people might need to like scream into a pillow or go run down the road and back. Or for me, it's usually cry, but can you process it by witnessing it versus actually going through the emotions? Because I really do have for me, I totally believe in growing pains, as in like, it will be painful to go through emotional growth, but it's kind of required.
That's right.
Do you agree?
So, I do agree. I think sometimes the only way out is through it. But again, I think that we can get solace from the idea that, from knowing it's only going to be about 10 minutes or so. According to Hawkins, it's not like we stay in this intensity for a long, long time and we have to wallow in it. The problem is most people, Danica, don't want to feel anything. So it's so easy to distract. You can, drink alcohol, you can go on YouTube or Instagram or, watch Netflix or whatever. And so it keeps getting buried down. And again, people are just like, it's got to be the diet. Maybe I'm not getting enough of this or that. Like there's this obsession with one cornerstone, when really it's looking at this part of, of our lives, the parts that people can't see, the emotional and mental part. I find if I get disappointed or I'm scared or something, all the emotions I don't want to feel, but I let myself feel them, it does get better. It does come through. And they say it's like a well. So let's say anger is your big thing and you let yourself feel the anger, really feel it instead of holding on to resentment. It keeps going down the more times you do this. And eventually you get to the bottom of the well where the same thing doesn't make you as angry anymore. And I can say that from personal experience, that has been the truth for me. And then you feel a lot lighter, and then, you know, you're not as sensitive. You can go through life just feeling like you're not as triggered. And that's huge. Huge. So like, you know, I get so excited. I never really like, I was doing this with my clients, Danica, you know, doing this processing, but then I didn't really define these cornerstones until after, you know, I had this big, huge life change where, you know, my mom passed away and I'm going through this huge breakup. Everything kind of happened at the same time. And I just started looking at everything. And by the way, this technique of feeling is how I was able to get through that grief. You know, grief can hang on for 20 years for some people, but feeling it, like you said, it's not fun. It doesn't feel good, but you go through it and then it starts to come out of your body, and then you can start to move forward little by little.
I really was not buying into the 10-minute thing too much, but now that you've mentioned it, the pinnacle of it, the alchemization is maybe 10 minutes, but there's a lead up and there's a surrendering that has to happen to that point. And so that can take a while.
Well, hold on, Danica. Just remember though, when I say 10 minutes, I mean only feeling. If you start thinking and you're like, this sucks, this isn't fair, I'm better, I should have won, I mean, whatever it is, that can last for years. So when you do this process, you literally have to say to your brain, I'm not listening to any thoughts, and you have to drop into your body and feel the feelings inside your body, which is where a lot of trauma and a lot of repression is held.
Tell me more about a couple of years ago. Like what, you know,
what happened?
What were some epiphanies? Like, so were there some moments that you had aha moments a couple of years ago when you said everything was kind of
it was a really, like, it was crazy because my mom is, you know, was always so healthy, and you know, she, by the time when we found out she had cancer, she was gone in 6 weeks. And so it was just like, oh my God, anything and everything can happen in this life. And so I ended up you know, just looking at my whole life and reevaluating everything. And I ended up, you know, moving out on my own. I went through this big breakup with my partner at the time, who is the husband. He's the father of my first son. So I became a single mom, and it was something like I never thought was going to happen to me. You know, again, half of my family's from the Philippines, where divorce is still illegal. So this was like a big, yeah, it's just like this whole big thing that happened. And I sort of,
was the breakup part of you kind of admitting certain things to yourself, facing certain things, or was this something that was inflicted onto you that you had to then deal with?
No. I think that when my mom passed, I looked at everything in my life and just became like, it's like I woke up and I was like, you know, this guy is great. Like, he's an amazing guy, but you know, we just weren't right for each other. And I really, you know, want a deep spiritual connection with my partner, which is what I have now. So I just feel like I hit rock bottom, Danica. I would go and like cry in the closet. I look at everything. And then I just started to rebirth. And one of the things that came out of that is Solluna. So when you think about what is Solluna, it means the sun and the moon. So it means like the light and the dark. So I started looking at everything differently. Like, don't run away from hard feelings. Don't think it's just about the food. It's this idea of everything's all together in the pot and we are whole and everything's in the part of us too. So, you know, the dark is where seeds start to germinate and grow. And shamans talk about the dark being necessary for transformation. You go into the dark, you go into those hard feelings, and then you grow. So for me, I came out on the other side. I started Solluna. I started talking about these cornerstones. I started talking a lot about the spiritual part of, you know, my philosophy, which is something that's been so huge for me. And I was doing it with my clients, but I was talking about food more publicly. So I just, This whole part of, what we were talking about earlier about internal reference started to come alive for me, and feeling, truly confident for being myself, not just all these endless achievements I was trying to do. So yeah, big shifts happened a few years ago, which is where this whole philosophy has come from.
So it was a breakthrough.
Breakdown, rock bottom, breakthrough. And then now I'll say the happy ending is that, so when this happened, my, this monk that I meet with from time to time from the Self-Realization Fellowship Yoga Center, he said, treat your home like an ashram for 5 months. Just do your practice, read your spiritual texts, like don't go out too much, don't do anything. So I did that. I just kind of reset, and I focused on these cornerstones. I focused on myself. And then, when I was ready, I started going out again and doing things. And then one night I went to this actually it was a podcaster dinner with some of these people that had been on my podcast who I barely knew. I got invited to this random dinner party, and I went in, and boom, I met John, my husband. And he says within 15 minutes, he knew I was going to be his wife. But we went on 3 dates in 24 hours. We went on a beach walk, and then he came with me to this work event I had to do. And then, we got married, and then,
had a baby.
And then the first time we tried to have a baby, we had a baby. So now we have our second son together. And it just, I would just say to anyone who's like, oh God, like, I know my life isn't exactly right, or this doesn't feel right. I would say, you can make it right. Like you can, not everything's going to be perfect, but if you stay authentic to yourself, if you really start to connect with yourself, you connect with what you deserve, you connect with, this whole concept that we are whole, we are worthy because we're breathing, just because you're Danica and I'm Kimberly and there's no one else like us. And when you come from that deeper place, you start attracting different relationships and different opportunities. And you just it feels really good to be authentic.
Mm-hmm. Well, that kind of leads to the spiritual element, which is, it's near and dear to me. I mean, waking up and meditating and yoga, and even just kind of beyond that into the realm of sort of the metaphysical realm, I could ramble on about all that, but what is the spiritual practice for you?
So think about how much time we spend, talking to your best friend, or making a meal, or playing with your kid, or, all these, we spend time on a lot of different things. But for me, I define the spiritual path as, connecting with and understanding yourself, what's inside of you, who are you really? And you need time to do that. You need time where it's not just doing, again, this external stuff, but going inside. So when you sit in meditation, when you sit in stillness, when you sit in nature, you have that opportunity to listen to yourself more, to connect. And I do have a defined spiritual practice. It's not just sitting in emptiness and doing nothing, but really, learning to work with your breath and the life force and techniques. I practice Kriya Yoga. So for me, it's just,
what's Kriya Yoga?
So it's an ancient form of yoga that was taught by Paramahansa Yogananda, this yogi, amazing yogi who actually brought yoga to America. So for me, it's just doing a practice. It can start with 5 minutes, but just really the consistency of sitting with yourself instead of being on your phone or watching or talking. Again, this is how you start to get your power. You start to go from external to internal, and then it changes everything. And guess what? The more connected you are to yourself, very practical everyday things like food cravings start to go away, mindless eating, all weight can come off, all these things we're trying to find your soulmate, everything starts to come in when we become more connected to our inner world. So it's not what society teaches, as you know, it's all, buy stuff, look here, do more of this. But interestingly enough, for thousands of years, the yogis have taught that to go inside to access your power. And that's really where it is.
So I get it. I agree, but that's still not clear enough. I feel like, especially if this is not common lingo to someone.
So let me say really, really simply, let's say in the morning, this can be the beginning of your spiritual path. So again, spiritual doesn't mean religious. It's not dogmatic. It's not anything like that. It's just, think about it as connection. So in the morning when you wake up, And you can do this, you can just sit up in your bed. Let's say before you go into your email, before you go into Instagram, before you're pulled into the outside world, just literally sit up in your bed, straighten your spine, close your eyes. And even if it's 3 minutes, I call this with my clients. So I'm trying to get them to give me, they're like, I don't have time for anything. Give me 3 minutes. Just listen to your breath. Literally just your breath. And do that. And I promise you, if you do that consistently, that's the beginning of your practice. You're more centered. You're in your body. You can feel what you need to eat more. You can feel when you're hungry. You start to be less thrown off from other people because you're in your own breath. Your breath will be probably slower and fuller for hopefully at least the rest of the morning. So that's the beginning, just a few minutes here and there of connecting in. And you can do that before you fall asleep. Don't fall asleep to TV. Don't fall asleep to other people's ideas, but just connect back in with your body and create a little bit of stillness. And out of that stillness, intuition builds and all sorts of things start to come forth. Don't worry about all that. Just start to have a few minutes a day where you sit with yourself. And that is very, very powerful.
So, next 50 phases on is I'm sure where you're at, but explain what that means when you get into intuition. Like, how does that arrive for you? What do you hear? Do you see things? Do you just know things? So explain kind of how intuition comes up for you.
Thank you, love. I love talking about this. I think that we all have intuition, right? We all have this incredible sixth sense inside of us. The problem is, again, if it's so noisy, if we're so used to just asking everybody else what they think and we're getting all the opinions, you don't listen to that intuition. So for me, again, the more I sit in meditation, I just like to be in nature. I go for a walk outside. The more still I become, the more, for me, intuition comes in, which feels like a thought that just drops in. So I call it a download. And I get more and more downloads the more I do this, which doesn't come from logical thinking. It doesn't come from my mind. It's coming from somewhere else. And I can feel it. So it just feels like something drops in, or I tend to get a feeling about someone, like, is this the right person for me to work with, or, the right relationship for this or that. And it's just a feeling you have that, we can all develop more just from spending more time with ourselves.
Like a sureness.
Yes, knowingness.
A sureness of just about what you need to do. And there's no more justification beyond just that's what you believe.
That's right. It's the next step to take. It doesn't mean you may not know the whole path, but it's direction on one step at a time, and that you can know. And so it keeps you, it gives you direction and energy and strength to keep moving forward. Whether it could be as simple as, the intuition of, my body really needs an apple right now, not an orange, or not a pile of, cashews. It could just be like really intuiting your body, and then it starts to expand into bigger and bigger things.
Yeah, I love those memes or GIFs, or more like memes, when they talk about intuitive eating. They're like, the intuitive eating is, it told me I had to eat a pizza, intuitive eating told me I had
But you know what? I just think sometimes if you need that sort of stress release, and it's like, it's going to give you something and you're going through something, the psychology of food cravings is something I wrote about in my third book. Crunching down on something like a chip is just a way to release tension. Eating a bunch of ice cream, which is soft and soothing, sugary, is like giving yourself a hug. So I would say, if that's really what you feel like you need to do it, and don't feel guilty. Be aware, hopefully don't make it a huge pattern, but sometimes you need that. Our goal is never 100%. Our goal is never perfection. It's 80%. That's the goal. Sometimes we don't hit 80%, but still that 20% is a lot of leeway to play with and to be human.
Well, what do you obviously have such an awareness to yourself. You have so many, quality practices that help you develop things, but like, what do you do? What do you do to help you grow more? What do you do? I guess it would be externally, but are there any things that you do to continue to feed you, to help provoke growth?
Sure. So I'm a huge reader, first of all. I'm pretty nerdy. I don't own a TV, but I just think I've always been drawn to the written word. So I don't listen to ebooks. I really do like books. I really do like the written word. And I do like modern books, but I still always go back to spiritual scripture. So this is the Bhagavad Gita. This is the ancient, it is still on my desk. Like I'm always flipping through. I really love, wisdom and poetry and again, scripture. So I try to read again every day. It doesn't happen every day, but I try to infuse myself with that, with, whatever form of wisdom I can every day. There's some modern, authors I love a lot. I love Eckhart Tolle. I love Deepak Chopra, who I actually co-authored my 4th book with. So I think, reading for me is a really huge form of nourishment. I'm also really big into women's circles. So before quarantine, we have something called the Solluna Circle, which is live. I do them in different cities. We also have an online circle where we talk about a theme. This month, our theme is honing your focus. Last month, it was overcoming self-doubt. So I really love sitting in a circle with other women, especially where we can be vulnerable and share and learn from each other. So that's something that was a big practice for me too.
Is vulnerability something that comes naturally to you?
No. Oh God, no.
Probably doesn't come naturally to anybody. I mean, I think you have to learn how to be vulnerable, right?
I think especially too,
Practice.
I think, first generation immigrant, there's a toughness that comes, I think, when an immigrant, like my mom was really tough and she came on a, academic scholarship, and it was like, we're working, like trying to get ahead and get out of poverty and make it. So, there's a love, but there's a little bit of hardness that comes with that too. So sometimes, vulnerability wasn't practiced in my family for sure. So it's something I've had to learn along the way, and something I've really worked on with my husband and deepening our relationship. And, sometimes I get annoyed, but then now trying to work on saying, actually hurts my feelings. And that's why I don't like it when you do that. And, sometimes I can cover anger. I can cover anger over my vulnerability, but I'm learning to let my, the soft underbelly show and when I'm really hurt.
Yeah. That's critical for connection.
It is. And it's really deepened our marriage and, all my relationships. So the circle for me was that practice of being vulnerable with friends, with other women, which I think, was hard for me too, because I wanted to show certain sides and maybe hide other sides. But yeah, we keep learning and going and practicing all these things. And then you can look back in a year. And I look back in when I telling you that epiphany from a couple of years ago, and I think, wow, like I really have, I've grown. And so for that, I give myself a pat on the back. I think sometimes we have to acknowledge what we've done and not just keep getting to the next level.
I agree. We can have destination syndrome and we can be very judgmental, and, to be able to stop for a second and just be like, yeah, that's pretty good actually. And be proud of ourselves. Yeah. Well done on helping so many people with how to live their best life, like how to be happy and how to get into your body so that you can, stop seeking so much externally and find it internally. Thank you for helping so many people do that.
Thank you.
And for giving birth to the GGS drink.
Yeah, of all the things I've given birth to in my books, these recipes, the GGS, my children, it's funny. It seems like I have a lot of babies now, Danica.
Well, for those who don't know, the GGS is the glowing green smoothie, and that would be like the cornerstone of your cleanse.
Yeah, I would say it's one of the cornerstones within the food cornerstone.
Right, exactly.
Greens, blending, easily digestible for sure.
Yeah, give us the recipe for that, and we'll end on that as like a parting note for people to go ahead and go make in their kitchen.
Great. So I would just say, think about it in terms of ratios. So it's going to be about 70% greens, and you can mix and match your greens, but kale, spinach, dark leafy romaine. If you're okay with herbs, cilantro, parsley are really great to cleanse your system as well. So when you're looking at your blender, you're going to put, depending on how much you make, 1 or 2 cups of water, no almond milk, no coconut water. This is just keep it simple. Water, 70% greens, and then you're going to blend those two things together because the greens need more work to break down. And then you're going to add lemon and about 30% high fiber fruit, which is usually for me apples, pears, banana. Now, the reason that
do you squeeze the lemon? Do you squeeze the lemon, or do you just cut the rind off?
I cut the rind because I want more of that fiber. The lemon's really important because it rebuilds our liver, which is our main detoxifying organ, our main fat burning organ. It helps to really give your smoothie a high threshold of vitamin C, which helps your body absorb the non-heme iron, the plant-based iron. And then the fruit is, besides adding natural sweetness, it's putting all those vitamins in your body. And then the greens are all the minerals, antioxidants. So it's a very complete, beautiful smoothie. So again, about 1 to 2 cups of water, 70% of however much you're making green, 30% high fiber fruit, and, again, depending, half or 1 whole lemon. And that's it. Blend it up.
Well, thank you so much. And this has been really fun talking to you. Yeah, so inspirational and so beautiful.
Thank you so much, Danica. It's so great. I admire what you've done in the world, groundbreaker for women. So it's a real honor, and I really love talking to you.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for listening to the Pretty Intense podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button.